I never imagined I'd turn into someone who held on to resentment. I used to genuinely believe that family was supposed to stand together no matter what. That's the idea I was raised on. But the moment my life collapsed, the people I trusted most didn't just disappear. They abandoned me without hesitation. It all began 3 years ago, when everything in my world shattered in a single night. One day I was healthy, working steadily, planning my future like anyone else. The next, I was in a hospital bed, staring at medical bills so high they didn't even feel real. The doctor said I needed immediate treatment, and without insurance, the costs were impossible. I was drowning before I'd even processed what was happening. But I wasn't alone. Or so I thought. My family wasn't struggling. Far from it. My uncle owned a booming business, my cousin bragged constantly about her investment properties, and my parents, well, they never stopped reminding everyone how comfortable their retirement was. So, swallowing my pride, I reached out. I wasn't asking for handouts. I told them clearly I needed a loan. Just something to get me through until I recovered and got back to work. I even offered interest, contracts, everything. I honestly believed they would understand. I truly thought they would care. Instead, I got the same cold replies again and again. We have our own problems to handle. I can't take on someone else's financial mess. Some didn't respond at all. Others sent short, dismissive texts. A few even lectured me about being responsible before insisting they couldn't afford to throw money away. Throw money away? These were the same people posting pictures of luxury vacations, designer bags, shiny new cars, and kitchen renovations. But when I was struggling to afford basic treatment just to stay alive, they acted as if I was asking for something outrageous. I was crushed, but more than that, I was furious. Still, I found a way to survive. I worked any job I could manage when my body allowed it. I fought the hospital over billing errors. I clawed my way through the mess entirely on my own. It was brutal, but I made it. And over time, that anger I felt toward them didn't fade, it sharpened. 2 years passed. By then I had rebuilt my life from the ground up. It wasn't glamorous. There were nights I went to sleep hungry, mornings I woke up terrified I wouldn't make it another week. But I pushed through. I learned new skills, landed remote work, took on anything that paid. Slowly, I crawled my way out of the hole they left me in. Every dollar I earned felt like a small triumph, a reminder I survived despite them. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message. It was from my cousin, the very first person I had begged for help back then. The same cousin who sent me a 2-sentence, "Sorry, times are tough" text while posting photos lounging in Greece. Seeing her name made something bitter twist inside me. Curiosity won. I opened it. "Hey, it's been forever. Hope you're good. Listen, I really need a favor, and since you're great with finances, could we talk?" I nearly laughed. A favor from me. After years of silence, I didn't answer. I let the message sit there while I leaned back and thought. At first I assumed it was something frivolous. Maybe she wanted budgeting tips for her next shopping spree. But the tone was off. Nervous, hesitant. Not like her at all. So I checked her social media, and everything clicked. She'd made a series of awful investments, bought properties she couldn't afford, and now that the market had dipped, she was bleeding money. I felt a cold, quiet satisfaction settle over me. Then I saw something even more striking. My uncle, the same man who built his empire from the ground up, the same man who lectured me about standing on my own 2 feet, had filed for bankruptcy. I stared at the screen, feeling a slow, icy amusement spread through me. Everything they once bragged about was crumbling. The same people who watched me drown were now gasping for air themselves, and suddenly, they remembered me. I didn't reply to my cousin. I waited. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my uncle. The same uncle who ignored my calls while I was begging for help was now calling my number over and over. I let it ring a little before answering in the calmest voice I could manage. "Hey, uncle. Been a long time." There was a heavy pause on the other end, like he was choking on his own pride. When he finally spoke, he sounded like someone swallowing every word he never wanted to say. And that's when I knew just how desperate they had become. His throat. "Yeah, it has. Listen, I won't take up too much of your time. We're in a bit of a rough situation right now, and I was hoping you might be willing to help us out." For a second, I almost wanted to play dumb, stretch the moment, force him to spell it out. But I already knew exactly where this was going. "Help out how?" I asked, my voice deliberately light, almost amused. He hesitated. I could practically hear him choosing his words. "Well, you've always been good with managing money, and we know you're doing well these days. We just need a little support to get back on our feet. We, the same we." That left me to drown alone. I leaned back in my chair, feeling that cold, razor-sharp satisfaction settle deep inside me. This was the moment I had replayed in my mind for years. The moment I'd imagined while lying awake at night, wondering why my own family had treated me like I was disposable. And I wasn't about to let it slip away. "Oh, I'd love to help," I said, letting a faint, unmistakable amusement curl into my voice. "But I've got my own life to deal with." Silence. Beautiful, heavy silence. I could hear him processing, trying to figure out if he'd heard me correctly, trying to swallow the realization that I had just repeated the exact excuse he once threw at me when I was fighting for my life. But I wasn't finished. "And besides," I added, "I wouldn't want to just throw money away." I heard his breath hitch. That phrase, the exact phrase he used on me when I was desperate and begging him for help with my medical bills. He scrambled for a response, his voice unsteady. "Look, I know things were tense before, but this is different. We're family." "Oh, now we're family?" I cut in, my voice sharpening. Funny, I don't remember feeling like part of a family when I was lying in a hospital bed wondering if I'd make it another month. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, he said, I see how it is." I smiled. A small, knowing smile meant only for myself. "Yeah," I said softly, "I guess you do." Then I hung up, and the moment the call ended, I knew this wasn't the end. Not even close. When people like my relatives fall, they don't fall gracefully. They panic, they claw, they beg, but only when they've run out of every other option. And right now, I was their last option. Because what my uncle said was true, I was doing well, better than well. Over the past 2 years, I had worked harder than I ever thought possible. After dragging myself out of that financial grave I'd been tossed into, I made a promise to myself I would never be that helpless again. I threw myself into learning everything I could: investing, online business, passive income, budgeting, scaling, anything that could build stability. I cut back on sleep, sacrificed time with friends, ignored dating entirely. While my family was still flaunting vacations and new purchases online, I was grinding through late-night tutorials and juggling every side hustle I could get my hands on. And then, one day, it all clicked. I found the strategy, the rhythm, the formula. I launched a business. It took off faster than I expected. Skills I once begged others to teach me, skills my own family refused to help me learn, I taught myself through sheer necessity. At first, the money trickled in slowly, then steadily, then suddenly it surged. I didn't just become stable. I became wealthy. And my family? They noticed. Oh, they noticed. They noticed when my struggles disappeared, when I started traveling, when I moved into a better place and upgraded my car. And the real irony? They noticed most when I began posting pictures of my wins, the very same thing they used to flaunt in my face. At first, they watched from a distance, awkward likes, commenting with emojis, pretending everything was normal. Then the messages began. Casual check-ins after years of silence. My parents sending a random "hope you're doing well" like nothing had ever happened. My cousin, "Miss Times are tough," suddenly wanting to reconnect. And once their financial problems started closing in on them, those messages stopped being subtle. They became frantic, transparent, desperate. For the first time in their lives, they needed me. That's why my uncle had called. That's why my cousin reached out. They spent years looking down on me, dismissing me, treating me like I was insignified. Can't. Now, I had something they wanted, and they assumed I'd just hand it over. But they had no idea how much I had changed. I wasn't the broken, scared person they left behind. I wasn't the lonely relative they ignored. Now I had the power, and I fully intended to let them feel it. So when the phone rang again, I didn't even flinch. I glanced at the screen. This time, it was my mother. Let me be clear. My parents weren't homeless or starving. They weren't in any kind of real danger. But for the first time in their lives, they were experiencing the same kind of financial pressure I had begged them to help me with years earlier. Suddenly, those old lines they loved to repeat, "We have our own lives to deal with," didn't seem to apply anymore. Now they needed me, and I was ready for them. I let the phone ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice steady and unreadable. There was a brief pause before my mother spoke, her tone unnaturally sweet, too sugary, like she was trying to coat her words in honey. "Sweetheart, it's been so long, how are you?" She sounded like a stranger, pretending to be familiar, like someone who had never once allowed me to struggle alone, though that was exactly what she had done. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit just long enough to create an ache in the air. Finally, I said, "What do you want?" I heard her falter. That wasn't the greeting she'd rehearsed. "Oh, honey, I just wanted to check in, see how my successful son is doing. I saw your pictures, you look wonderful, really, we're all so proud of you." Proud, right? Where was that pride when I was lying in a hospital bed terrified of what my future looked like? Where was that concern when I was drowning in debt and sending messages that no one answered? But I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of knowing any of that mattered anymore. I'm doing fine, I said flatly. But you didn't call just to say that. What's going on? She took another pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, thin and fragile, like she hoped pity might slip through. Well, things have been tough lately. You know how the economy is. Your father's investments didn't do well, and everything is so expensive now. It's been hard. I stared up at the ceiling, waiting. Then I heard her inhale sharply, like she couldn't believe she had to say the next part out loud. Well, I thought, maybe you could help us a little. There it was, the exact moment I had anticipated for years. The same people who abandoned me when I was gasping for help were now standing in the wreckage of their own decisions, hands out, expecting me to swoop in and fix everything. I could have done it easily, a single transfer, barely a dent in my account. And that's exactly what they expected, that I was still the soft-hearted kid who would fold under guilt. They had no idea who I'd become. So I smiled to myself and said no. Silence. Then my mother let out a shaky laugh, like she assumed she'd misheard me. Honey, what do you mean no? I leaned forward, gripping the phone a little tighter. I mean no, Mom, I'm not helping you. The silence on her end was suffocating. But we're family, she whispered. That almost pushed me over the edge. I clenched my jaw, forcing my voice to stay calm. Oh, now we're family? Funny, I didn't feel like family when I was begging for help and you all pretended I didn't exist. That was different, she insisted weakly. We were busy, we had your own lives to deal with. I finished for her. She said nothing. And in that moment something clicked. They weren't apologetic. They didn't regret anything that had happened. They weren't sorry for abandoning me. They were only upset that the power had shifted, that I was the one in control now, that they were the ones who needed something from me. I breathed in deeply. I learned a lot while I was struggling, Mom. I learned exactly who I could depend on and who I couldn't. And before she could scramble for another excuse, I hung up. As I lowered the phone, another realization hit me. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. For the first time in my life, I felt free. But I had no idea what was coming next, because my family wasn't finished, not by a long shot. People who are used to entitlement never hear no without a fight. They weren't going to accept it gracefully. They were going to push, hard, and they did. It started with the messages. At first they came from my mother. I don't understand why you're acting like this. We're family. Families are supposed to help each other. We raised you. Don't forget everything we've done for you. Please think about it. Don't let bitterness poison your heart. I ignored every single one. Then my uncle chimed in. Heard you're too good for your own blood now. Money really changes people. Don't forget where you came from. I actually laughed at that one. Where I came from. The struggle I had survived. The nights I had cried alone because they abandoned me. They had the audacity to act like they were responsible for anything I had built. I didn't respond to him either. And then the tone shifted. The polite requests vanished. My mother texted, I can't believe how selfish you're being. We're having a hard time and you just sit there like it's nothing. Then, you're wealthy now, it's just money. You wouldn't even feel it. Then my cousin jumped in. Wow, after everything, this is who you turned into? You're disgusting. Their anger practically radiated through the screen. The frustration, the entitlement, the disbelief that I dared deny them. And the end came the final attempt, the most predictable one of all. Your father isn't doing well. The stress is affecting his health. I hope you can live with yourself if something happens. That one made me pause. Not because I believed it, they were experts at manipulation, but because it revealed exactly how desperate they had become. My father was perfectly fine, but the fact that my mother would stoop that low using his health as a weapon to manipulate me was beyond pathetic. And it told me something important. They weren't just dealing with a rough patch. They were sinking fast. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened next. The messages stopped, and they started showing up. It happened on a quiet afternoon. I had just returned from a meeting, feeling energized about some major business moves I had in progress. Life felt solid, steady in a way it hadn't in years. I finally felt like the one steering the wheel instead of clinging to it for survival. Then the doorbell rang. I checked the security feed on my phone, and there they were. My mother, my father, and my uncle, all three of them standing on my doorstep. They had never been to my home. They had never even asked where I lived. But suddenly, there they stood. Awkward smiles stretched across their faces, eyes tense, shoulders rigid. They weren't here to apologize. They weren't here to talk. They were here to corner me. I exhaled slowly as I watched them on the screen. My mother pressed the bell again. waited, then knocked. She started calling my name like she had any right to act familiar. My father stood stiffly with his arms crossed, irritation clear on his face. My uncle pulled out his phone, probably preparing to call me again, another call I had no intention of answering. So I did exactly what they never expected. I ignored them. I closed the security app. I let them knock. I let them wait. Because if there was anything they had taught me, it was that silence could be a powerful answer. But of course, they didn't back down. Not them. They went further. I let 10 minutes pass. Then 15. I wondered how long they would cling to hope. How long it would take before they realized that the son, the nephew, the person they once abandoned without a second thought, was not going to crumble because they finally needed something. But they didn't leave. Instead, my mother pounded on the door harder, her voice rising in frustration. "We know you're in there. Stop being childish and talk to your family." That word again, family, it meant absolutely nothing coming from them. Fine, I thought. If they wanted face-to-face so badly, I'd give them the truth they'd been avoiding for years. I took a long breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. My mother's expression flipped instantly, a dramatic gasp of relief, as though she hadn't been seconds away from shouting. "Finally," she snapped. "Why were you ignoring us?" I crossed my arms. "Because I don't owe you anything. And honestly, I assumed if I ignored you long enough, you'd take the hint and leave." Her mouth fell open, stunned that I had actually said it. My father scoffed. "Is that how you speak to your parents?" I turned my stare on him, unblinking. "The same way you spoke to me when I begged for help and you told me you had your own life to deal with." That shut him up instantly. My uncle tried to recover the moment, clearing his throat like he was the reasonable one. "Look, kid, we know things were rough before, but that's in the past. Right now we're in a tough spot and do you think I care?" I cut in. He blinked, thrown off. "Do you really think you can show up at my door?" I continued, keeping my voice steady, "after ignoring me while I was fighting for life, and expect me to welcome you in with open arms? Expect me to hand over money like it's nothing?" My mother pressed her lips together. "It's not like that. It's exactly like that," I snapped. The dam cracked. Years of hurt, betrayal, and rage surged upward. "Do you even understand what I went through?" I demanded. "Do you have any idea what it's like to lie awake wondering if you'll survive the month? To panic over how you'll pay for medicine? While all of you sat in your comfortable homes pretending nothing was happening? That's not fair." My mother started. "No," I shot back, voice low and trembling with fury. What wasn't fair was watching the people who were supposed to love me act like I was disposable. What wasn't fair was nearly dying while my wealthy family ignored every message I sent. Silence. Not one of them had a single word to offer. Because deep down, they knew the truth. But I wasn't finished. "And now," I said, my stare cutting into each of them, "now that you're the one struggling, now you suddenly remember the meaning of family." I let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Well, let's make something perfectly clear." I stepped forward, lowering my voice but sharpening it to a blade. "You didn't care about me when I was suffering, so I don't care about you now." My mother's face contorted with anger and disbelief. "You're being cruel." "No," I said coldly, "I'm being fair." She opened her mouth again, but I was done. I turned around, walked back inside, and slammed the door behind me. And for the first time in years, maybe the first time in my life, I felt nothing but strength. I felt something inside me finally unshackle. They kept hammering on the door for a while longer, yelling my name, throwing out the usual accusations. Selfish, ungrateful, heartless. But none of it touched me anymore. I just stood there, breathing slow and steady, feeling the heaviness of their presence gradually drain away until all that was left was quiet. I checked the camera. They were gone. They never contacted me again after that day. Maybe the reality finally sank in, that I wasn't going to be their emergency fund, their backup plan, their solution every time their own choices caught up with them. Maybe they simply moved on to find someone else to exploit. Either way, it didn't affect me, because my answer had been delivered loud and clear, and I had no intention of ever reopening that door, literally or figuratively. To me, this situation perfectly shows how self-interest can poison relationships that are supposed to be built on trust and support. The protagonist was abandoned when they needed help most, left to fight their own battles while the very people who should have cared looked the other way. And yet, the moment success arrived, those same people suddenly remembered the word family. It's infuriating how some only show concern when there's something to gain. But the protagonist standing their ground, that was the smartest, healthiest choice they could have made. There comes a point where protecting your peace matters far more than appeasing people who have repeatedly proven they don't value you. Sometimes the word no is the only shield you have, and it's enough. What do you think? Was the protagonist justified in cutting ties for good, or do you believe they should have helped anyway? Share your thoughts in the comments.